Aloha and welcome to episode 39 of That Time I Got Arrested. So this episode is about the worst decision that I've ever made. What? I know, like, fuck me, right? Like, that's a really heady thing to say. But this is my X-Files. This is my, what's that cup called? The Holy Grail. This is my Holy Grail. This is all my fucked up bullshit. This is like my relationship baggage. This is like the relationship, you know, that I compare all of my other relationships to. This is my great love, you know? This is my Casablanca. I hope that you enjoy listening to this episode because it was like nice to sort of get all of this off of my chest, you know, to be able to sort of tell like my experience in it, because I think that when you have a person that you date for a really long time and you have like a big group of mutual friends, it's sort of hard, you know, to navigate like a breakup. And we dated for 5 years, and so when we broke up, it sort of felt like a divorce, you know? You ever been divorced? I've been divorced a couple of times, but I've never been married. I fell in love with Voldemort, you know? Voldemort and Kevin Federline. Like, this episode is a throwback. Hey, by the way, all you new listeners, if you haven't checked out the other episodes, please go back and listen to all of them. And I'm really grateful and I love you so much. And thank you for all of your messages and letters and DMs and friend requests and follows on Instagram. B Casper on Instagram, That Time I Got Arrested. I would love to hear your story. If you would love to send me an email, thattimeigotarrested@gmail.com. It would be so cool if you guys wrote a review on iTunes, if you gave us 5 stars and wrote a little something about how this podcast makes you feel. I've gotten a lot of DMs and I've only seen like maybe 3 or 4 new podcast reviews. I'm on the internet, you guys. I have a smartphone. So if you're not engaging with me, I'm gonna fucking be upset. No, I'm just kidding. I'm really glad that you're still here. But also, please do your part. I love you. Say it back. I love you. Say it back. I love you. Say it back. My name is B Casper, and my entire life has been a lie. That's not even my real name. But don't worry, I'm going to tell you all of my secrets. This isn't the story of how I became an orphan. This isn't the story about how I jumped off a 5-story building and survived. This isn't about how I died and came back funny. This is That Time I Got Arrested. Yeah, it's so much fun to sit here and really just like talk about myself for so long, because it's like, it's almost better than therapy, because I get to sit here and like really rehash all of it with this like invisible person in front of me who I only imagine to be like the most supportive and loving friend that I could ever possibly like have the pleasure of having. So it's like a really comforting and easy experience. And then sometimes like the letters and the DMs that I get are just like, whoa, whoa. It's just like, wow, like, whoa. Like, I feel like I'm striking a chord within, a few of you. And like, that's, wow, that's so special. That is so special to me. And when you tell me that like, I feel authentic, then I feel like I'm really doing my best work, because I'm sitting here and I'm like pretending that you're here, and I'm pretending that we're already very well acquainted with each other, and that I'm just like telling you the stuff, you know, that's like in the deepest parts of my heart that I like really want you to know, so that you can like know all of the inside, outside, like clean, messy, like pretty, dirty, like icky, yummy parts of me. And so all right, so this, yikes, this episode is about the worst decision that I've ever made in my whole entire life. And that's, wow, like shocking. Hello, like, you're like, wait, hang on. haven't you already said that before? And also, haven't you already done that? And also, like, how could that possibly be true after everything that I've just told you? But really, genuinely, honestly, deeply, my most sincere, like, I'm holding you with my hands on your shoulders and I'm looking you deeply in the eyes and I'm telling you, like, no, this is the worst decision that I've ever made. This is where it all went wrong. Okay. I'm sorry. That's really true. And it like hurts me. And I like want to smack myself in the past, but I can't. So I just will have to tell you what happened instead. I should start from the beginning and where we met, which was on a hill in a place called Deer Park in North Carolina. I was at a music festival called Tri-Numeral, which was only for the head stash of the heads. And we sat on this hill and we were both very spun. We nodded at each other and I was like flirting with his friend, you know, and definitely like had no interest in him whatsoever. And it was weird because my friend, that fucking bitch, oh my God, thank you so much for starting the hashtag of fuck Rachel. Like that's really, really fucking flattering and pleasing to me in a way that I couldn't even begin to describe. I value loyalty so much, obviously. Obviously, I value loyalty so much. So for someone to be like, fuck Rachel as a hashtag, I'm about it. And so Rachel liked this guy and like I didn't, you know, I like liked someone else. But you know, the world is weird and like fate is interesting because at the end of the day, like him and I ended up together. We just were friends first. We were friends for a very, very, very long time. And then we were lovers. And, you know, he was like a combination of Voldemort and Kevin Federline. Remember that one? It's that guy. I dated him for 5 years. And I really have to go back to the beginning so that you can understand sort of like the end and like why this was like the worst decision that I ever made. And the reason why I made the worst decision that I could ever make and why so many women who are like me are in this situation. I can't even tell you how many girls I like met and saw and talked to and like hugged and had, you know, emotional experiences with that were in the same exact situation as me, you know, but worse, really. Like I jumped off a fucking building, but like they had it worse. Like I tell you what, you know, it was these women who had been like tortured and abused within the criminal justice system and had been recycled and treated like pieces of meat, like objects, like bodies, like fucking cattle, basically. And, you know, when you get out of that situation, what happens is you make really bad, personal, romantic, intimate decisions, like engaging in risky behavior and then returning to relationships that are just fucking abusive and evil. And, you know, this guy never hit me, you know, not when I didn't ask him to. And it wasn't like your typical abusive relationship, but, you know, you'll see. You'll see what I mean. So we met in college. We were both pretty young, and we were friends first for a long time, and then we were lovers, and then we were like balls deep in this relationship. And we sold drugs together and we were in the same secret society and we had the same friend group and we did everything together. We were thick as thieves, except closer. And, you know, he was my best friend. We had the exact same sense of humor. So it was like jokes really like went a long way between the two of us. We had the same interests, the same hobbies, the same friends, the same likes, the same dislikes. Like we were almost the same person, you know, but we had sex and that was like fun. Like that was really cool. I feel like if you could fuck yourself, like you would. And like I did. And I had a great time doing it. And I've never loved anyone more than him. And I don't know if I ever will, you know? He was my best friend. Like, I will never get along with anyone better because I just loved his sense of humor because it was my sense of humor. So it was very easy. It was comforting and it was fun. And, you know, everything that we did was a joke and we did it, you know, with style and grace. And I've never had more fun with like another person, you know? So it was great. It was so great for so long until it was bad, you know, and then it was like really bad. Because imagine dating yourself. And so all of your best qualities are there and like all of your worst qualities are there. And we really were the same person because he was lying about everything, you know, about everything that he was, about everything about who he was. Like, I didn't know who he really was. And, you know, he was too afraid to be himself because he was afraid that people wouldn't like love him or accept him. And like, I mean, same dude, like samesies. So it's crazy because like, even when I found out about all the lies, even when I saw him take his mask off and become a completely different person, it was kind of like, I almost loved him more, you know, because it was like, I really understood that. I like felt that so deeply in my soul. And I wanted to love him harder because I wanted him to know that like, you know, it was okay to just be whoever you actually were. So here's what happened. You know, you've heard about him. I've like talked about him before, like in the podcast, you know, he's that guy that I used to date in college. And he had a lot of crazy experiences with me, but maybe the craziest one was when we were living together. Our senior year of college, we got an apartment in downtown Asheville. We went to 2 different schools in the same town. He went to UNCA and I went to Warren Wilson. And so we got this 1-bedroom right across the street from the Orange Peel. And it was amazing. It was such a cool place. And we had just moved in. And I was like flying to Florida for a family thing and, you know, went to the airport and my flight got canceled. And I called him and I was like, please come get me. And instead I had to like take a cab home because he didn't answer. And it was so weird because he had just dropped me off. And I got back to the apartment and I walked in on him having sex with 2 dudes that he met on Craigslist. And like, I mean, whatever, you know, like that's fucking fine. Like I feel so different about that now than I did then when I was like 22 and it happened. You know, now I'm like so much older. And like when it happened, I was kind of like pissed and shocked and sort of just like, if anything, I was just mad that he like didn't tell me. You know what I mean? Like I did not have a problem with it, but I was just kind of like, oh fuck, like you could have just told me and we could have just like been like doing this together or like been fine. You know, now it's like a big thing because you lied and now it's like I don't even know who you are anymore. You know, and then I was kind of, we had the conversation. I was like, are you gay? And he's like, no, you know, but it was hard. It's complicated. It's layered. Like sexuality isn't like a straight line or like an easy thing to understand or sort of like dissect. You know, it's like this complicated, like personal, like layered, sort of like intimate, weird, like even like changing thing. So, you know, like I knew that I really couldn't be like more open and understanding of like that experience because it's definitely something that I've, you know, done on my own. But at the same time, it was like, fuck, dude, like we've been dating for 3 years. Like we've been having sex for 3 years. Like he slept with 2 girls that lived in his house. And it was like a big thing that like almost broke us apart during my study abroad. That was like awful and miserable for me, you know? And it was like, that was like a big thing. And we had sex all the time. So it was kind of like we were broaching these topics of like sex addiction and like lying and cheating and like safety. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know these dudes. Like, are you being safe? Are you using protection? Like, am I in trouble? You know, it's just kind of like it's a weird thing in a lot of different ways. And it was assaulting. And then I was also the first person to ever find out that that was what he was doing behind closed doors. You know, he was from the South. He came from a pretty conservative, like Christian background. Like he definitely didn't have the kind of pedigree that allowed for someone to even experiment in that arena. You know what I mean? Like that meant getting discommunicated from his family, from his community, from his friends. His friends were like a bunch of white rich boys who used the N-word openly. Like I have this very vivid memory of being in the back seat of a Mercedes driving around New Orleans and having the driver say the N-word, and it's like 2008, and I say, hey, you can't say stuff like that anymore. It's 2008. And he put his hand over my mouth, and I was just like, what? And he was like, shut up. It's just like, it's a different world, like I'm recording this podcast in the North, like in 2019, but like a long time ago, meaning fucking 10 years ago, it was people still and probably still do. And like, that's why the world is the way that it is. But it's like, people have like a different mentality and like a different life and a different upbringing in different parts of this country. And it's fucked up and it's weird. And it's like, until you're there, you don't even really believe that it's real almost. You couldn't imagine how anyone could think or feel that way. But I mean, even in my own family, like I'm from the North, like we're from the North, like it doesn't matter. Like people are fucked everywhere, basically, is what I'm saying. So he was repressed and I was just sort of like there, and like I had like an open heart and I was like attached to him. So that happened. I found out about all that stuff. We had like a really dramatic breakup. I like left North Carolina and moved back to Chicago and very quickly got arrested. And him and I, had continued to like talk and see each other and like have sex all the way up until when I went to jail. And then when I went to jail, I wrote him like this long Dear John letter of basically like, we need to break up, and I don't even know how that was received because I didn't speak to him again for like another 2 years. When I got out of prison, he was one of the first people I hit up. Shout out to that episode of all my crazy DMs. I hit him up and he was very quick to respond with like, hey, fuck you, and like a lot of people felt like that towards me. So that was kind of just the reality that I had accepted from him, that it was like a, hey, fuck you. But even throughout that time, we didn't speak to each other for like almost like a year. It had been about 11 months because now I'm like rearrested and I'm in a fucked up state of mind. But like I hadn't like reached out to him for 11 months, except that I did send his mother like a birthday card and a Mother's Day card because I really liked her. I liked her a lot. And his family had kind of like a weird... I mean, it's like, how much do I even tell about him? It's like, I don't want to tell his story necessarily, but it's like, you have to understand who he was a little bit to me and who he was in general to understand why me now in this point in time am making the decision to like reach out to him and make the worst decision that I'm ever going to make. So he had a brother who was 8 years old who died. He was hit by a car and it was kind of his dad's fault. And his dad was gay and his dad had this like secret gay life that tore apart his marriage. And his mother was like a very devout Christian from like very, very old money. So that's sort of like a succinct, painful sort of brushed off version of like this whole life of another person, but like I knew him and like he knew me and like I knew his mother and like I loved her and she was so sweet and she had been through so much and like they all had been through so much and like I loved him, I loved him for everything that he was and everything that he wasn't, and I really saw myself in him and like I saw this painful life that he had led and I felt that pain and I just like loved him more for it, So he lied to me. He like hid every part of himself from me. He put my life in danger and he was ultimately like a very untrustworthy and like nefarious person in my life. But, I loved him. I loved him so much. So now I have like a month between I'm just recently arrested. I make this deal with my parole officer and I have to turn myself into rehab. So I have a month. I have 1 month left of like, semi-freedom before fucking shit gets all upside down again, before I'm just like back in the system that I just very recently escaped. It's like, I'm going home to a place that I fucking hate, So I haven't been able to sleep with a guy up until this point. I've been out of prison for 11 months and I've had a lot of sex, but like none of it has been hetero sex. It's all been homo sex, And so when I found out about this guy and, I found out that he was like fucking other dudes, I was like, I fuck women. Like, why wouldn't you tell me, you fucking idiot asshole? But I think that that's just hard. I think it's hard when you're from the South. I think it's hard to come out in general, especially when you're like a very, you never know. You'd never know that this guy was gay. You would never even think it. But like, oh my God, like so gay, like chill though. I mean, who cares? Not importante. So I have a month and I like reach out to him a couple of times and I had sort of like stalked him online and like saw all the stuff he was doing and was like commenting on it because, I know him really well. So I know all the stuff to like get to him. And he doesn't respond for like a couple of weeks. And it's about a week before I'm about to turn myself in to go into like court mandated rehab that's at Cook County. So basically turn myself in to go back to jail. And I hear from him and he tells me that he had a dream about me and that he was sorry for everything that had ever happened between us and that he would always be sorry and that he knew that he had been a monster and he wished that, he hadn't acted like that. And it's like, man, I mean, you didn't even really have to apologize that hard, but that was like a good apology. So I, immediately booked him a plane ticket to fly to Chicago. Of course, I paid for it and booked a hotel so that we could just like be alone and have sex. And we hadn't seen each other in like a long time, It had been the longest time that we had ever spent apart from one another. And like he had seen other people and I had been through a lot. So it was like a weird, tense, intense, like crazy reunion, I picked him up at the airport and he looked the same and I looked the same. And, within 10 minutes, we were like making out on the train platform. And within an hour, we were having sex in a hotel room. And it was basically like no time had passed at all. And even though I had a weird sort of understanding of his sexuality, like we still were compatible on every level that we, came together on. So it was like this weekend of sex and cocaine and techno music and walking around the city. And, we had like a great time. It was funny because now we're both like in our, mid-20s, but we felt like, teenagers again. And it was comfortable and easy and like fun. And so right before he had to leave, I was going to rehab for 90 days. And then right outside of getting from rehab, I'm going basically straight to Japan. So it's like I've got rehab and then I've got a job that starts with like an international location. And he's going to spend the next 6 months in Europe. So we've got a really like different lifestyle and we've got different paths and different journeys. But I'm like in the taxi with him driving to the airport and we're both like kissing in the back seat and he's crying and I'm crying and we're soulmates and we're going to get back together. And he's like, I'll see you when I get back from Europe. And I'm like, I'll see you when I get back from Japan. And that was it. It was like, I was right back where I was when we were really in like the thick of it. I think when you have sort of like an abrupt ending with someone, which ours was like pretty abrupt, when you like go to jail or have like a really intense experience when you find someone like cheating on you, or when you find, the truth about someone's sexuality that they're may not being completely honest with you about. It's like a whole life altering shift. So we had this like abrupt ending, and now I'm in like a really tense, like weird place. And we have kind of like this prolonged like meeting, it's like we've decided that we're like fully in love, and that makes me feel like tethered to something, which is good, right? Except remember, this is the worst decision I could ever make. I'm like getting back into an abusive relationship, and it's not like he's going to beat the shit out of me, but like it's going to be so, so, so bad. And like, here's where it starts. It starts because you think this is like the best thing ever, but actually you're a psycho. You're completely deluded. You're in a really tough spot. You're dealing with a lot of trauma. You haven't healed from any of it. You're not dealing with any of your problems. You're fucked in the head more than you could ever even possibly imagine or come to terms with. And you're just going to make the worst decision that you could ever make. And you don't even know you're making it. You think that you are doing something awesome and fun and cool and real, and that it's a good idea, except no, it's the worst idea you've ever had. And basically you're in love with Voldemort. And that's it. This is like, oh man, like Voldemort didn't have a love her. He had like followers, right? And I think that at the end of the day, that what I would later realize is that I thought he was my lover because I was like under the spell of like an evil wizard, So, bon voyage.